us now to get to our topic on food handling and food safety as part of the module on environmental health, where we have managed to look at the other things ranging from the time we started this module with the introduction to environmental health, in which a number of concepts were looked at, environmental impact assessment, population, health and environment, urbanization, and settlement, up to when we looked at the biodiversity and conservation, as well as resources management. So as part of at food safety and food handling, because food, first of all, comes from the environment, and there are a number of processes we looked at contribute.
I think you're breaking. Or is it my network?
It's currently off, but you'll be getting back.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it was a general problem.
Be. Derek, do you have anything for you?
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Yes, boss.
Yeah, the screen the screen is visible for you. Okay. We would have less trouble. As I introduced this topic to you earlier on food handling and safety, the fact that this food originates from the environment. Yesterday we looked at farming systems with focus on Uganda. So there are a lot of processes that are involved in food handling and food safety. This slide is also rich in content with the pictorials. So this food production, when we talk about food safety and food handling, most people run to think about food that is during preparation. But food handling and safety has a lot that would be interested in if the integrity, the safety and the suitability of the food has to be maintained. From the time food is in the farm up to the time food is on the table, a lot express. That's why you able to see on top of from the time these foods growing up to when they are harvested, distribution, processing, marketing, purchasing, then preparation and consumption. But also we have another important component that the environmental health would be interested in, which is resource and waste recovery. So the end product of this food is waste, like for any other processes. To contribute to nutrient recovery, this waste gets back to the environment, and while it is getting back to the environment, then it contributes to nutrient recovery in many ways, either as food crop remains, as human excreta, etc. So the food system not only have to think about one stage, which is food preparation and consumption, but rather think about it as a complex whole for us to ensure. For the next slide, if we don't have any questions on this introductory slide.
Excuse me, sir, is there a system maybe that is laid that happens to follow up and make sure maybe everything goes as per the environment safety, starting from the production, distribution, processing up to the consumption?
Is there a system that
follows up to ensure everything is done how it's supposed to do, and in case of any probably mishandling, there is a way they probably combat or restrict or manage such conditions to prevent or to promote a healthy environment?
Yeah, but well, it would be good if we have a system like that. Only that it may not be there. The fact that these processes, most of them are independent of each other. Where food is produced is not where it is eventually distributed, not where it is processed and where it is consumed. So that monitoring process or monitoring system would be hard to institute. It can be easier to institute if food is produced and consumed in the same place. But at the moment where food is produced and consumed in India's coffee, the such a system may be hard. Is that
You're breaking, sir, but I've got your
still
point.
waiting for you to move? Okay. Yeah, let's get to the next slide.
We're already there, sir.
Yeah, so Okay, that's great. In this part of the audio, we should be able to understand hygienic practices, the contents of food safety, principles of food safety, handling of food or the food handling practices, food inspection, supportive enforcement measures that can contribute to food hygiene. So these are simple learning objectives. Just take us to the next slide. Yeah, so on this, I put a few questions that would guide our discussion. One is, what is food? If you were asked, what is food? Amos, what would you respond?
I would say food is any substance which is eaten and contribute and has nutrients which can promote development and growth in an individual. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Amos. Anything that can be eaten that has nutrients that are required by humans, that would be a good submission. Mariam, what would you say food is? I think Mariam is not with us. Courteous, maybe. If you are with us, what would you call food? Because we are talking about food. We had from one of the colleagues defining food as something that is having nutrients required for human body functioning. Yeah, but when you look at food, it has various components. It has the edible part. It has also the waste. So one would need to both in regard to environmental health. So another question would be, what does an ideal food consist of? What are the uses of food and how can food be described? Then in relationship to environmental health, how should food be handled? So once you answer all these questions, you would be able to better handle food and ensure that food is safe for human consumption. Because you see, the key term in defining this food is that this food is required for human body functioning, and meaning it has to be consumed. So what type of food is consumed, of what quality, and how does it reach consumption stage? Having looked at the various stages through which food goes from the time it is produced to the time it is consumed. Next slide. So to introduce you to the concept of food handling and food safety, I would want to start with this statement that all over the world, people are seriously affected every day by diseases that are caused by consuming unhygienic food. So we have to give due emphasis to good hygiene practices, prevent and control foodborne diseases. Often food poisoning, gastrointestinal problems that result from consuming contaminated foods, unhygienic foods, are with us and here and there. But if we are to manage completely, we also need to think about preventing such instances from happening. So the food we eat should be free from contaminants such as microorganisms and chemicals. But important to note that it may be hard to consume foods that we look at. So in this session, we run hygiene, safety, handling, food inspection, supportive enforcement measures that contribute to hygienic foods. Okay, yeah. So any questions to these introduction statements? If no questions,
Excuse
Derek,
me,
you
sir.
could take us. Yes.
We look at this process where we don't have control over it, especially most people who maybe eat food, maybe, for example, you're at workplace, you just order for the food you can eat. We don't have microscopes to see these microorganisms, nor actually have these labs to test the chemicals in the food we eat. So how can someone be in position to know or to ensure they eat that free contaminated food without organisms? to you, sir.
Yeah, all right. So quite an interesting one. You don't have microscopes to see whether the food is contaminated or not. How do you ensure? How do you ensure that the food you eat is free from the contamination? I will call Immaculate Haruko to give a suggestion on that. Immaculate.
Thank you, sir. Maybe we can, based on other things where we don't have a microscope, we can use some visible evidence to tell that the food is contaminated, like the color changes for some particular foods, the development of molds, and then the smell. We can basically rely on that. But where in terms of microorganisms, it really becomes very, very hard to detect that maybe this food is contaminated with typhoid or something of the sort. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Immaculate. That's good. Away from looking at the suitability aspect of food by looking at its physical properties like smell, appearance, growth of mold, etc. One also needs to appreciate the fact that food can also be contaminated actually by you, the consumer. So the best way is to ensure that the food process or the food processing stages adhere to hygienic practices ranging from the farm, transport, during its preparation up to when it is delivered to you. So we must take and be interested in where does this food originate from. Often, if you go to a restaurant and you visit their preparation area, you may not even eat. So, Derek, it may be challenging to tell that food is contaminated with microorganisms, especially if food has just been served, because it may not have lost the appearance. But ensuring that the foods are safe at all stages. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Eston has a question in the chat. He's saying that he has seen health inspectors confiscating food from the vendors, and first he happened to see that it's not meeting the standards of maybe the health standards. So he's kindly requesting that you provide some public health acts in this line. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, the Public Health Act provides for that, as well as other provisions that provide for food inspection. I would be able to share those guidelines that one may use, especially in food inspection, for you to declare that this food is unfit for human consumption. There are certain parameters that you must follow. So it is in order that when food is unfit for human consumption, then it is not allowed to reach the stage of consumption. So I think when I later share those guidelines, maybe later today you can be able to see that is provided for in the law. So food hygiene is one of the most important aspects in environmental health, and it refers and relates to many practices that are needed to guard and maintain the quality of food from production to consumption. Terms like from farm to fork, from farm to table are used because it includes every stage in the process, from growing on the farm through storage, distribution, to finally eating. And it includes correction and disposal of food waste. We already talked about nutrient recovery. So in the end, the process of food production would generate waste, and this waste must be appropriately handled so that it also does not become a danger to the environment. Kasha says from garden to plate, that would be also appropriate. So you realize there are a lot of processes in between, even if the garden or even if the farm is on the same plot of land with the household. From the time you sow your seeds up to the time you harvest them, there are a number of processes, which all these processes must be friendly to the environment as well as human health. Next. So throughout this chain of events, there are many points where the food can directly, indirectly, knowingly or unknowingly be contaminated with either chemicals or microorganisms. So what could be the sources of contamination on farm? Esther Nansubuga, what could be some of the processes that may lead to contamination while still on the farm?
So I did not get you clearly.
So we are saying that throughout this chain of events, food gets contaminated either with chemicals or microorganisms. So what could be the sources of contamination at farm level? Be the
I
sources
think
of
it could be through maybe the chemicals that are used to spray on the food crops.
Yeah, that would be one. Chemicals while still on the farm, especially when it is harvested. During harvesting, food can also be contaminated. You have seen, especially when manual, you destroy, you cut, maybe you are harvesting potato, and that accelerates the process of decomposition. Those will rot very fast. So there are many ways through which this food can be contaminated. Some of the processes we are aware others were not. So food hygiene involves all those practices that would prevent microbial contamination of food at all points along the chain, from the farm when it reaches consumption. In the chat box, there are very many other suggestions: storage space, materials, chemicals that are used to, like tomatoes, preserve them, farm equipment, fermentation, which is a natural process, smoking, etc. As well as micro and macroorganisms such as rodents and other insects. So all those processes that enable food to reach the table from the farm when they are still of good quality is what we would be interested in. So one defined for us at the beginning for human health, some foods are unsafe and must not be consumed. Talking about food safety is closely related, but a broader concept that means food is free from all possible contaminants and hazards. And in practice, food safety and food hygiene are used interchangeably. Though food hygiene is used interchangeably with food safety would be broad, because food hygiene would involve maintaining and creating hygienic conditions and healthy conditions for food, whereas safety would mean that the food is eventually safe for consumption. Let's move, Derek. Then another closely related term is food suitability, which concerns itself with the intrinsic characteristics of the product in relation and presentation. Derek, there is some red warning. I don't know whether it affects us. It has been coming and going away. I don't know whether it has any effect on our
It's okay. It will disappear. It is okay. It has no effect.
It will disappear by itself. Okay. So looking at food suitability, when there is a deviation from what the food should look like, should appear like, should taste, when there is evidence of spoilage by microorganisms, sometimes So with the suitability, this is the assurance that the food is acceptable for human consumption. And if there is any deviation from what this food is supposed to be like in terms of taste, texture, smell, then such food, yeah, is rendered unfit for human consumption. Food safety and suitability must be assured at every link of the food chain. So we must ensure that food any form of contamination, but also remain suitable appearance affects the likelihood that this food will be consumed or will be, yeah. So the next slide simply describes, it's an illustration that describes food safety. Food is safe if there is no presence of and food is suitable when there is no change in its natural appearance. So in case there is presence of microorganisms such as salmonella, which we may not see, bone sprints, especially for meat, stones, etc., that food would be unsafe. But if there is change in its original appearance, it be detected by presence of mold, smell, that food would be unsuitable. So both unsuitable and unsafe food is non-consumed feed for human consumption. That's basically what this illustration tells us. Okay. Yeah. So why are we concerned with the food hygiene? One is to prevent spoilage. Of course, uh, if there is contamination, this has a negative impact on health, ranging from causing disease, causing discomfort, but also it has a financial implication because spoiled food has to be not consumed, but rather thrown away or discarded. Inform and educate people about simple practices that keep food safe. Not everyone must own a fridge or a deep freezer. Not everyone must build a structure for food preservation, but we must be innovative and ensure that there are a simple and practical methods for keeping safe food. Protect food from adulteration. This adulteration is usually intentional contamination, and you maximize profit. It includes addition of other substances, either to increase the quantity or these substances may be added to the food to increase shelf life. One of the commonest adulterated food is milk, and once changes, first of all, the color. You can easily tell if a lot of water is added. Also, its shelf life can go bad very quickly, but sometimes you may not know. I remember when we are one of the from the swamp to his car. So as he distributed his milk, people realized there were tadpoles in the milk. So one of the people who asked the guy responded and was like, these cows drink water from the swamp, so there is a likelihood that they swallow the tadpoles and eventually the tadpoles end in the milk. But that is on an extreme end that you are able to notice some of these results of adulteration. Usually such goes unnoticed. To ensure that there is proper practice in food trade and prevent sale of food that is either offensive or defective in value and quality. It's baptizing the milk. Your experience with baptized a pagan that is not baptized. Or Chivirije, are you with us? Before we look at the practices.
Is Kayevile Pro?
I think unable to. Yes.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon. No, I was responding on the scenario that you gave
Yes,
where
good afternoon, Paul.
I was responding on the scenario that you were sharing where someone found tadpoles in milk. So in other words, someone had mixed that water with that milk. And we locally call that baptizing.
Water simply from the swamp. It's a term that is, of course, not appeasing. So let's go to the hygiene practices very quickly. Just speak through this slide. It simply shows that food should remain in its natural state, especially looking at vegetables and the fruits. They should remain in the natural state until they are consumed, because you may not have to boil them. No much of the processing. In food production is growing and production potentially have to exist. So one must ensure that at that stage there is no introduction of the of such harmful substances is ensured by training personnel that carry out the application of chemicals, use of right chemicals, holding time should be observed. The amount of time that food spends testing or slaughtering uh, animals. There is some recommended time which one from the time they use the chemical. Also, from the time chemicals are used on animals, there's a specified time, about 72 hours from the time antibiotics are administered, about 12 hours from the time these acaricides are used on animals. But very few farmers will be wanting to take and make a roast if injected with an antibiotic. For example, amycin is still on the market. I have not been in cattle production also for quite some time. But usually by the time these animals are given such antique and they eventually die before the specified time. And often such animals are slaughtered and consumed by the public. It's not a good experience though, and it is unsafe for human consumption. So one must adhere to such holding time. Usually when meat inspection is being done, such considerations are taken care of. Likewise, harvesting should be done at the right time or right stage of maturity. Of the moisture content in these foods. If harvesting is done at a wrong time of maturity, maybe when the crops are still too young, damage is much higher. If it is done too late, damage will be higher. Whether and harvesting would also save contamination at growing and production. Next. Yeah, disease animals should not be slaughtered for which are aggregated from those that are good. Storage places of production and harvesting should be action. Important to note is that food safety begins during production at the farm, and many activities that can reduce food safety take place on the farm. A very few processes will take place during storage, during transportation, and during time on the farm, ranging from these to 8 months, and some others more than a year. So as you read through this, you could name some of those activities that render food unsafe for human consumption. Next, during transportation, that's another stage at which food can be contaminated, and special attention should be given food during transportation. Measures to protect should be put in place. And these range from cleaning loading platforms and containers, damage from weather conditions, for example, by covering the food, packaging products correctly, protect them from sun, avoid bulk transport, which can crush products, and avoid use of bags. But on the right side of the slide, the picture shows the challenges that happen during the transportation, especially when food is being transported for commercial purposes, to minimize the cost of transport. And usually food is transported in bulk, different types of food transported together. Or even transported with the including you reach their final destination where they are to be processed and consumed. Contamination cannot be ruled out. Also, if you test food that directly came from the farm to the preparation area, as compared to the one that has been on transit for a long time, the taste usually is not the same. I would give an example of meat. If one buys meat around Kampala and another one buys, I don't know whether we have people who have experience who have bought meat both in Kampala and the up country, maybe Barara or so, and have compared the taste. Anyone by just show of hands?
The one of Kampala is like they've added in some herbs. It's very flat and what? Very, very flat. It doesn't have like meat taste.
But when you look at the comparison, the one bought around Kampala has a flat taste, despite the animals having originated from Barara. If you go to, I usually see people as we travel from Mbarara to Kampala, they prefer stopping over to buy some meat. So I never knew the logic. One day when I asked, they told me that the taste of the meat in Kampala is flat. So I tried now to get back to the cows. During transportation, they take long without feeding, meaning they are made to fast utilize all the nutrient reserves that they would have otherwise been with at the time of slaughter. They are whipped. That alone makes them anxious. So a lot of changes take place in them before they reach finally the slaughterhouse. And that alters the taste completely. The same happens to other types of food. If transport processes do not provide for conditions that are favorable. We could move to the next. Someone says the use of chemicals to preserve taste during transit. That is very correct. If humans get tired and stressed, then the one in Kampala later has to be preserved in fridges for it to stay for a long time. Continue with the transport. Transport vehicles must allow effective separation of different foods and of foods from non-food products. E.g., same vehicle should not be used to carry fruits, vegetables, fertilizers, and plant protection materials, or even people. Food containers should be exclusively for food and should be marked. We could go to next. We have looked at this exhaustively. There are 4 correct type of containers which are kept in sound and clean conditions are necessary to avoid contamination and damage. Refrigerated containers may be necessary for perishable foods, and transport vehicles should be properly maintained so as to prevent contaminations, dust, as well as the duration they stay on transit. The more time these foods stay on transit, the more they are exposed to weather conditions, dust, as well as fumes from the vehicle that is transporting them itself.
Excuse me, sir.
Transport vehicles need to be good condition. Yes, Derek?
We are looking at farmers in our areas. So, if we look at refrigerated containers, where do you expect these people to get it? Wouldn't we look at maybe some other local available resources which we can use to refrigerate these foods that are perishable in the transit process? Over to you, sir.
Okay. Yeah, looking at a local farmer, this would entirely depend on what does this local farmer deal in. Farmer is dealing in fruits and vegetables. We know these perishable, and they may need time before they reach the market. Some foods like containers that do not allow sunshine would serve that purpose in absence of refrigerators. For example, aluminium cans transport milk because first of all, the material used to make these cans can reflect light, and the material itself is thick. So such local or locally available materials can be devised or can be used depending on what one is transporting. And for how long to transport medium can for 300 kilometers before materials if the transport is for a short distance. Hope that one answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. The next would be at storage. Storage facilities should also be in position to prevent contamination. The surrounding of food premises should be free from refuse, debris, overgrown bushes, and any other operations that may be a source of contamination should be separated from the food storage and the e.g. In most households this at such as charcoal due to the housing. You remember yesterday we talked about housing. So here this comes and speaks to housing so much, whereby if the housing conditions are not providing for enough space, then chances are that the food and non-food materials may be stored together. Facilities should also be designed to prevent the entrance and harboring of pests, crack-free floors, smooth floor, and with sufficient so food can also get spoiled
You're breaking, sir.
level, and hence good. Hello.
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 You're better now, sir.
Yes. Are you able? Oh, okay. Good. Yeah. So ensuring that the food storage facilities are in good conditions would also equally prevent food contamination. So we could go to the next. This just is a continuation of the food storage facilities, talking about doors, how lockable they should be. Clear labeling is also key during storage, being able to identify lots of food so that when food is being taken from the storage facilities, the principle of first in, first out is followed, because the longer food stays in store, the more chances for it to be spoiled. Fragile products should be kept under cold storage. A lack of information on products distributed can contribute to spread of biological contaminants and make food unfit for human consumption. So this tells us that food should be clearly labeled. Actually, I would encourage everyone buying food from food stores, from groceries, to always check labels. Most people realize that they have bought expired products even after consuming them. So at least check expiry date, check the content, because usually by the time you reach home, you realize you bought the wrong product because it is similar to what you wanted. So at least as a public health, never buy food from food stores and groceries and supermarkets without checking the expiry date. Some of the foods have a short shelf life, and using that knowledge of shelf life, you can also tell whether they are about to expire or not. I don't know Illumina's experience with Indians prolonging expiry date is. How is that done?
Well, can you hear me? We just saw some music where
Yes,
Indians
we
were
can.
in the warehouse and they are changing expiry date. I hope some people saw that on the news. There are people in the warehouse and they're changing the expiry date. So even our expiry date in Uganda tricky.
Yes. So of course that would be tricky, but foods that do not is always visited one of the old waste management sites. I found a lot of food when I asked, they told meat was from one of the supermarkets around that. When the owners of the supermarket learned about the team from UNBS coming, they had to run. And there is a question in the chat box wondering who decides the expiry date in the manufacturing entity and how authentic it is. The few processing plants I have visited the control officer. So it is this quality control department that is responsible for estimating the content of the food, and during the quality of the food, the quantity, as well as the expiry date. So if you have a quality control officer, that would be a great danger to the community food from such a company. Let's go to the next, Eric. Yeah, so almost towards the end of the food systems cycle, there is a cooking of the food. Though some foods do not require so choice of food of good quality cooked, and the process that food is taken through during cooking is key, ensuring that one eats food immediately after it is cooked would solve a lot of problems, because it does not allow time for microbial activity. So food can be cooked or should be cooked carefully, and then if food is cooked and is not consumed immediately, it should be carefully stored of 60 and should there be a chance that this food needs reheating, thorough reheating of leftover food should be done, preferably to the heating point at which food was last served. In raw food and cooked food, protect cooked food from contamination by storing in dry proof containers. Of course, the conditions of cooking differ from one food to the other. So at this stage, the person doing the cooking, the environment in which this food is cooked, the materials that are used for cooking this food can introduce the harmful chemicals as well as microorganisms that initially weren't in the food, and they render it unsafe for human consumption or unsuitable. Hope this is clear. Derek, we could move to the next. This talks about the personal hygiene of food handlers. There are a number of precautions that food handlers should take, ranging from being healthy and having clean bodies, as well as wearing protective clothing. One of the studies I participated in showed that most of these food handlers served food, and even in the current practice, most food handlers go to serve food and handle food when they are sick, as long as they can introduce food handlers should be with no open cuts, boils, lesions. They should not be allowed to serve food or else they should cover them with waterproof dressing to avoid smoking. Chewing of gum should be avoided during food preparation. It should be noted that outdoor clothing should be replaced in locals such as rings, watches be removed before starting to work. But if with the food handling, especially in commercial eating places, the reverse to this idea is true. Usually when it's time for food and the eating premises inspection, these people already know what we want, and when they know we have come, they immediately switch and remove all this. Uncovered hair is another source of contamination, sneezing and coughing, as well as people who are suffering from infectious diseases which can be transmitted through food. Not being allowed to handle food, and regular medical examination of food handlers should be mandatory. So what Derek was asking about how he can know whether the food is safe for consumption is at his workplace, maybe in Kampala has many delivery companies. You order for your KFC and is delivered. So you realize that a number of processes from the time this chicken were growing to the time they are prepared at KFC. The delivery itself may have no problem. They may package it very well, but the process is quite lengthy. So we can move to the next. Yeah. Preservation and processing. Often food production exceeds consumption, and the fact that foods are produced seasonally, there may be need to extend their shelf life so that there can be food at the time when there is no production. So Processing and preservations are also key processes that enable food to stay for a longer time. No food remains fresh for long. Sooner or later, when it is left, of course, it starts to decompose. Why the food cannot stay for a long time is because it has and there is microbial activity that is going on in this fresh food. So no food ideally remains fresh for long. Immediately it is left, it starts to decompose. It goes soft, smells, and becomes unfit due to microbial activity, especially the bacteria. And as fresh food is not always available, especially during seasons when there is no production, various methods to preserve, sort, and maintain the integrity of food have been developed. If bacteria can be prevented from getting into food or conditions are unfavorable, their development can be created. The food will remain for a longer time. In the subsequent slides, we shall briefly talk about the various methods for food preservation. I think, Derek, you just could scroll to the next. Yeah, this is still related to the previous, talking much about the cause of the activity, uh, due to microbial activity, action, exposure to weather conditions such as the sunshine, which increase this enzyme activity, physical damage, excessive moisture, mechanical damage, e.g. by insects and rodents. So for food to be kept for a longer time, it should be well treated, inhibit or destroy elements responsible for causing this. How long should it be stored? In what form? Who decides the expiry date? All addressed here. This will entirely depend on the method that is used for preservation. So for you to be able to preserve this food for a longer time, you could do that by reducing temperature, as some microorganisms won't survive at a low temperature, increasing temperature, lowering pH, drying to reduce the water content, antimicrobial agent, protection of food from excessive spoilage agents like rats and insects. Okay. Yeah. Cross to the next. So some of the methods for food preservation that enable us to include the shelf life of the food include chilling, and stored at low temperature point. It is a short time method of preservation to preserve foods like meat, fish. If food is cold conditions of the freezing point, Gloria Apio, what is the freezing point? Gloria, are you still with us? Gloria is not with us. Ruth, are you with us? Hello, it seems people could have dropped off.
We are there.
You're there. Hey. Yes, so when we talk about freezing point and up, what do we mean when we say freezing point, Muhammad?
Hello.
Oh,
Yes.
seems people are getting hungry. Yes, yes, Muhammad, please.
Pardon me the question, sir, about the freezing point.
Yes, what is the freezing point? The question is as simple as what is the freezing point?
Okay, thank you. What I understand about the freezing point, this is the state whereby a liquid changes into solid, but most especially we take it as the point of 0 degrees Celsius.
All right, that's interesting. The point at which the state of matter changes from liquid to solid state usually 0 degrees Celsius or around, I think, 32 degrees by using.
Mr. Anthony, kindly unmute.
Yes, I have just seen the notification that the host had muted me. So, temperature kept, food kept 18 degrees Celsius. We refer that as freezing. It's a long time method of preserving food, and this can also be used for food such as fish, meat, vegetables, and fruits. So, of course, these two use energy. You remember we talked about energy sources yesterday, and the reason was so one must think about sustainable forms of energy that can be used that in that regard. Pasteurization heat treatment, but to a temperature also below 100 degrees centigrade. This is also meant to kill and chilling, which if there is defrosting and thawing, the microbes may again raise. With pasteurization, there is using heat treatment of milk, some forms of fruits, juices, creams, etc. The commonest food treated by pasteurization is milk. And pasteurized milk can stay for a longer time than the one that has been freeze. Next. Sterilization, which is closely related to pasteurization, because both of them use heat. But this is heat above 100 degrees Celsius under pressure for a short time. So this combination of treatment using heat and pressure would kill microorganisms that would have otherwise caused spoilage. Canning, which consists of pressing prepared food into cans. Air is exhausted from such cans and sealed, and then they are sterilized and cooled. So the fact that there is sterilization means microorganisms are killed, and the canning process itself with extraction of air does not allow microbial activity. Canned food include meat, food, fish, vegetables, etc. Let's go to the other slide. Eric, we may not need to take long time. Concentration of liquids, especially the liquid foods by evaporation. This reduces moisture, dehydration. This looks at complete removal of water from the food, leaving it dry. Smoking, which is basically used at even community level. Smoking done by burning wood or dust and directing the smoke into the food. So the smoke has an antimicrobial agent, and it also dries the surfaces of the foods, preventing further damage. Next. Yeah, so we have other treatment or preservation methods such as fermentation and the fermented food keep longer or can be kept for a longer period than unfermented food because of the acid that is produced during fermentation. We already talked about lowering the pH. So when pH is lowered, some microorganisms cannot survive at low pH. Of food is for milk. the milk is converted into yogurt. Chemical additives are another way of preserving food. Saturation, using salt, and control of insects and rodents, which may range from use of physical methods like traps, building technology, as well as use kill these rodents and insects. Derek, we could do just some of the common methods for food preservation. So important to talk about is that foodborne diseases. Let's go to foodborne diseases. When food preservation is not done and food safety is not ensured, foodborne diseases are likely, and foodborne illnesses are illnesses associated with food, and the causative agent can be ingestion of contaminated food. It involves gastrointestinal disturbance. It may affect an individual. Sometimes it may affect the whole family, and it may also affect a large group of people, causing foodborne outbreaks. So food poisoning happens when there is an illness brought about by eating harmful foods, and this can either be chemical, can be biological, and can be by toxins. A common example is the aflatoxin. Thank you, Derek, for sharing the link for registration. Members, you register your attendance so that you don't miss. I think we would be going to the very last slides. Derek, you could scroll to the last slides, and we come to the end of this session. Yeah, so in food processing and food preservation, it is important that one understands the point at which food can be contaminated, and the control measures are taken. That's why I would encourage you to read about the hazard action control critical points, the HACCP. Read about food inspection, because for various different ways, buttons, including milk and meat inspection, and then foodborne diseases and outbreak investigations. So this brings us to the end of this session on food handling and food safety. You could go to the next slide. There is an activity. In this activity, you will be required to visit a food market in your area, move around it, observe and record the practices of the food handlers, and they compile a report on your observations. This you may not for the part of your learning, and I guess this you may not need an introductory later. I see what is HA. CCP, hazard analysis critical control point. So that basically looks at where hazards or where contamination could enter or could be part of the food. If you are able to identify the stages at which food would be contaminated, then contamination can be controlled. Brings us to the end. If there are questions, we had our discussions being interactive. I guess we would end this session here and go for lunch.
There's a question in the chat. She's asking, are we submitting the 2 pages report? And when could that be?
No, this 2-page report we are not submitting. You will be able to, you see, most of
So you're breaking. I don't know that is my network.
is the practical activities we may and go to our learning that we could visit. That is your network. That is, it is simply part of the learning.